Hey everyone, Shaun Stevenson here, author of the Throne series, and it is now March. So that means we need to look back at February and see what books did we read, well, or did I read? You read books, I read books, hopefully you got to read some good books. But let's take a look at what books I read this past month. So I read 8 books total. Now, one of those was a picture book, and then one of those was a nonfiction book, which I'm not really going to talk about here. But there was quite the mix of books this past month. I read some that were really great and some that were really bad. So let's go ahead and we're going to dive into this and talk about these books. So first up, the first book that I read in the month of February was actually a book in a series that I've been wanting to read, and I finally just read the very first book in the series, and that is book number 1 in the Dead Time Stories series, Terror in Tiny Town. So this series is written by a pair of sisters who go under the name A.J. Cascone, and these are kind of in that Goosebumpsy vein. You know, those kind of 90s Goosebumps books that were coming out around Goosebumps. And I gotta say, this was a pretty interesting book. I really liked it. I actually did think it was a little bit creepy, but then it moved out of creepy and more into this sort of fantasy-ish world of a kind of a war going on between the toys and the kids. And that was really fun and I really enjoyed it. However, the whole time I kept thinking about the Lynn Reed Banks series, The Indian in the Cupboard, and I was thinking about those books the entire time I was reading this. Because I thought, oh yeah, this is kind of sort of similar to that, where the toys are coming alive, they're doing things, and in this book, they're very menacing is part of the deal. So you have this really creepy toy that is going after the kids, and I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was a lot of fun. It had some great moments, and like I said though, it wasn't really scary, but I did like it. It was a great way to start off February. The next book I read was a new book that just came out a couple years ago that's also in the Goosebumps vein, and that was Terror Valley, book number 1, School's Out for Never by Squall Charlson. So I was super excited to read this book. I thought it looked really interesting. I had seen some other people posting about this on Instagram and on YouTube, so I thought, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. And it was so much fun. I really, really enjoyed this because I have a review about this book. And like I said in that review, I feel like this book took the Goosebumps style and made it sophisticated for today's audiences. And I thought that was really great. I had a lot of fun with it. I really enjoyed the zaniness of it, but it actually did have some really creepy moments. There's one scene when the main character is hiding in a bathroom, and that part was the part that got to me. I was like, oh, no, I don't like this. But it was a lot of fun too. I really enjoyed this one. This is book number 1. There's 3 books out right now, and book number 4, Squall Charlson actually commented on my video previously and said that book number 4 should be coming out sometime this year, but no firm release date yet. So hopefully we get that soon. Definitely check these out. They're a lot of fun. I have book number 2 I need to read still, You're Not My Sensei, which looks like it's a lot of fun as well. So I really want to read that one. And then there's book number 3 as well. That's about a camp and a movie, it seems like. They're making a movie about a camp massacre kind of thing. So that looks like a lot of fun too. So book number 4 is going to be called The Frostbiters from what I can tell. And that sounds like a really intriguing title and I can't wait to read it. But this one's definitely worth checking out. If you're a Goosebumps fan, if you like those kinds of books, check this one out. You will enjoy it. And I will just tell you, it is a little Groundhog's Day, but it's not in the sense of you don't like those kind of looping storylines. This one is not repetitive in that way, and it never became boring. I was intrigued the entire time. I wanted to know what was happening, and it was a great read. Okay, and then I read an ebook, and this was quite the controversial thing, and I really did not like it that much, I'm not gonna lie. I read The Phantom of Locker 13, which I read this book through Readsy Discovery, and so Readsy Discovery is this program for reviewers to read books and then give reviews on them. You do get the books for free, and in exchange for an honest review of the book. And if nothing else, my review of this book will tell you that this is not a situation where reviewers are just leaving rosy, glowy, reviews of books. This book was absolutely awful. It was an AI generated book, and I did not realize that until near the end of it. And if you want to know more details about all of that, you can check out my review on this book. But that book was absolutely awful. It was the worst book I read in the month of February. I actually hated it. And it was so frustrating to read because it had like a great premise, but then the execution by AI was just not good. So I really was pretty frustrated about this book. By the time I finished it, I thought, I'm kind of upset about this because, I don't want to wade into the AI debate because there's a lot to say on all different sides of it, and I don't really want to wade into it. This book in particular had so many hanging threads. It had multiple endings that were all like not intentional. It was a mistake. Like that book ended and then there was another chapter and the book ended again. And then there was another chapter and the book ended again. And every time it was like a different storyline that was going on. It was really unfortunate. I really actually did not like it. So I am not a fan of AI generated books. I just am not. I think that there needs to be a human being involved in the writing of a story because I think that stories are too complex and there's too much going on in trying to convey emotion and meaning and what is going on in a story for it to be just boiled down to cookie characters that are cut out of the same cardboard that are moving through a plot line to get to the end. I think even the other book that I read this month that I did not love had more heart and ingenuity than this book did. And that's because it was written by a human being. At least I'm pretty sure. And then the next book I read was actually a total mood read. So I recently was at this thrift store. It was like a community thrift store. It's really cool because it was a thrift store where all the purchases of everything in the store goes to help people who are without homes. And so it went to a local shelter where they get food for people, they get meals to people, they give people a safe place to stay. They get resources to people like job skills, all sorts of stuff. And so I was super excited about this thrift store when I found it. And I thought, oh, this is really fun. And they had a ton of these Nancy Drew books from the 90s. And I was super excited about it. On a whim, I was like, oh, I'm kind of in a mystery mood and I want something nostalgic. Why don't I read one of these Nancy Drew books? So I picked up number 103, The Stranger in the Shadows by Carolyn Keene, and this was a lot of fun. So this is one of the minstrel ones that came out in the 90s, and I'm not sure if this one has a previous iteration. A lot of the Nancy Drew books are like rewritten, and someone who is way more of an expert on Nancy Drew than me, if you want to leave a note in the comment to help me know more about that, I have tried to like figure it out, and it is a complicated Nancy Drew world. But this one was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. It had a great little mystery. I guessed only a part of it, and then I was totally thrown off by one of the like red herrings. And so it just made it so much fun because I thought, oh no, that's what it is. And then I got to the end and I was like, oh, that was actually that surprises me. That was great. So this was a lot of fun. If you like an old throwback mystery that, there's no like murder or death or anything in these Nancy Drew books. It's always crimes of like arson or, theft or burglary or kidnapping, stuff like that. So it's a little bit less intense than other mystery novels. I mean, even Murder, She Wrote is like murder is involved every time. But these are a little more lighthearted, but this one had a great 90s throwback feel because it was set there in a mall. There's all this stuff going on with the mall that the Nancy Drew is investigating. So you had this whole mall as a backdrop, which you wouldn't think of based on the cover. And I just thought it was a lot of fun. It does take place around Christmassy time. So I feel like this would have been a better December read or a November read even. But it still was a ton of fun. If you can find any of these Nancy Drew ones from the 90s, the minstrel paperback ones, they're a lot of fun. I so enjoyed it. And then next up, I'm so sad and disappointed. I was looking forward to this book. It was on my list of the 7 books I'm looking forward to in 2025. But unfortunately, this book was not that great. And I really am sad about it. And that is the Goosebumps House of Shivers, book number 4, Say My Name by R.L. Stine. Now, this book technically didn't release until March 4th, but Barnes & Noble had it early. These books have like a soft release date, so the Barnes & Nobles can, or Books A Million, or anybody can put them out as soon as they get them to sell them. So it's not like a hard and fast release date. So this was out early at Barnes & Noble, and I do have a review of this book up on the channel with no spoilers at all. I worked very hard to make sure there were no spoilers in the discussion at all that I had. But I am going to be putting up a Let's Discuss video of this soon where I will be getting into all of the spoilers because I did not like this book. I will say this. I have thought a lot about it though, which is an interesting thing because I've read other books that I really disliked that I are like 3, 2, 1 gone and I don't think of them anymore. But this book I actually have been thinking about quite a bit and trying to figure out what was R.L. Stine trying to do here? Like, what was the goal in this book? And there's a couple of plot points that I really have been stumped on, trying to figure out like what was going on, what was he trying to say or do in this? So I was actually talking with an author on Instagram about this book who said he really enjoyed it. J. Peter W., who wrote the Creepy Jeepers series. And I read the one book of his, book number 3, It Came from the Pumpkin Patch, which was so good. Really enjoyed that book. But he really enjoyed it. And he enjoyed it for a very specific reason. And I can't say the reason here because it is a spoiler. But I will be talking about that in my Let's Discuss video. And I did think about what he had said, and I thought, okay, that's an interesting point. I think that's a very fascinating thing. But he really enjoyed this one. So this one is definitely one of the more out there Goosebumps stories with a lot of just wild things happening and what's going on. So it's not my favorite. I don't really love the Goosebumps ones that are just like wild and out there, like Go Eat Worms, those kind. I just don't love them. So this one was interesting. I definitely have more to say about it, and I will be saying more about it soon in my Let's Discuss video. And then the last book I read in the month of February was a really fun one, and I was super excited to read it. And it was Ghosts of Fear Street, book number 2, Who's Been Sleeping in My Grave? Now, I feel like the title of this book is very misleading because this book, it makes it sound like it's about something a little different than what it actually is about. But what it's actually about was really, really creepy. And I thought, oh, yep, this is like classic, really great 90s throwback kind of stuff with just so much fun involved and also a great premise. These Ghosts of Fear Street books, I really like them. I actually think I like them sometimes better than Goosebumps. And I know that might be controversial to say because none of these were written by R.L. Stine. They were all written by ghostwriters. But I really enjoy this series. I think it's because they're a little more menacing than Goosebumps books often were. And they have the like supernatural or horror element comes in a lot earlier than a lot of Goosebumps books. In a lot of Goosebumps books, you kind of have like these fake outs until near the very end, and then all of a sudden the monster is there, the ghost is there, etc. Or you find out, oh, that was the ghost, that was the monster all along. And in this book, it starts off right in on, okay, there's something creepy going on here, and then you find out the motives behind what is happening, and it is terrifying and has such a great ticking time bomb like kind of motif to it. It's so well done. I really love the ticking time bomb kind of genre where it's like there's something in a deadline, and if it doesn't be, if the characters aren't saved by this time, then everything is lost kind of stuff. I love that. I think it adds such a great element to stories. And so this one I really, really enjoyed. I flew through this thing. I loved it so much. So this one definitely high up there for me. Definitely a good Ghosts of Fear Street book. And this one is being re-released soon. And it actually is coming out with some great cover art. I'm super excited to see it. I was a little tempted to maybe pick up the new covers. I don't know. I gotta decide. That might be too many books for me. We'll have to see what happens. But I really did enjoy this one. So like I said, I did read also a picture book and I read a nonfiction book this month. And those were really great books too. I really enjoyed both of them. But I'm not going to talk about them here because this is a more fiction-focused channel and usually more middle grade YA and adult books than picture books. But I did enjoy those. They were really great books. And this was a great little reading month. It wasn't like my highest reading month. It wasn't like the most I've ever read in a February, but it was great. I really enjoyed the books I read, except for a couple. But, you know, if you only read 2 clunkers out of 8, I feel like that's pretty good. So on to March. There's a lot to read. I've already read a couple of books. I've got some stuff I'm reading that I'm loving so much, and I can't wait to talk about. So until next time, everybody, keep reading. Bye.